people what are some research-based messages. I think in the last week, 10 days, like many of us, what's happening, whether it's in our own businesses, our own practices, in our communities, seems to be washing over everything. And one of the things that has occurred to me as well is the amount of ageism that I've seen about it. So for example, and I shared this with Bruce, I was out of town for last week, but in Colorado, one of the towns basically passed an ordinance to not allow people aged 60 and over to go into bars or restaurants. Now that has since become moot because the governor has said no one can go to bars or restaurants, right? And basically has shut them all down except for drive-through. But it was, and then of course we know what's happening in Italy. We know there seems to be a lot of themes of intergenerational warfare around coronavirus. And so I've been spending a lot of time thinking about that and just was wondering whether all of you were, whether you had thought about how this was affecting all of you and whether you wanted to kind of pivot a bit on the topic. So what would be really helpful for me, Bruce, would be to hear from people, and I don't know if you typically do that through the chat function on Zoom or people just kind of raise their hand and unmute themselves and ask questions. I'd love to know what people here on this call, how you'd like to spend our time together. And I'm happy to go through. I mean, if what you're here is, hey, I want the basics of reframing aging, I'm happy to do that. But I also thought we might have a more thoughtful conversation about what ageism and how it is affecting a public health crisis. I was on a conversation with someone this morning who is asserting, and I have no idea whether this is true or not, but is asserting that because of the degree of ageism that is present in our society, less attention was given to this because it was felt it only harmed old people. And now, of course, the CDC has said everybody's at stake, so now we're really going to ramp things up. I'm like I think many of you, we're all trying to figure out and react to this and be proactive about it. So I'd just love to hear from you what would be useful.
Bruce, you're muted.
I'm going to suggest that rather than release kind of mayhem here, that maybe the first thing would be if does everyone know how to use their chat function? I guess let me put it into gallery view so I can see. Could I see everyone raise their hands if they know how to use chat function? Okay, so most people know how to use chat function. So I think maybe the first thing to do would be if everyone could just quickly go to the chat function and send like 5 words of how you would, what would be most beneficial in terms of the way to proceed. Or if you have a burning question that you want to ask, if you just take 2 minutes to do that, then I can go through it quickly rather than
that would be great.
Releasing this. And maybe in the meantime, Janine, while they're doing that, you could just tell a little about the Frameworks Institute project, the Changing Narrative project, right, so that those who don't know it will have a little background.
So Changing the Narrative in Colorado is a kind of a state community-based grounds up attempt to apply the principles of reframing aging that were developed by the Frameworks Institute. So the Frameworks Institute, of course, is based in Washington, D.C., and they exclusively work on framing social issues at the request of a number of the leading aging organizations. I know some of you are involved with ASA, GSA, AARP, National Council on Aging, and others. In 2015, they engaged on an in-depth research project to identify basically why is there this huge disconnect between how those of us who might consider ourselves experts in some area of aging, how we see things and how we believe things, and how the general public views aging. So elements of the project were to, one, map what experts know, through literature reviews and interviews with a lot of people. I'm sure some of you were interviewed. Then there was an analysis of how does the media, I'm hearing myself, I don't know why, but anyway, an analysis of how the media talks about aging, and which was, and I'm sure if I asked all of you to raise your hand if you thought it might be negative. Anyone want to raise their hand? How the media, right? Spoiler alert. And then in-depth qualitative interviews with members of the general public around the country about how they think about aging. So what are those patterns of thinking that are in our head? So this was not public opinion surveys. This wasn't, do you like old people on a scale of 1 to 5? This was when we think about aging and aging in America, and it's important to note that this research was done in the US. What do we think about it? And then some key themes emerge from that. Frameworks Institute calls those the swamp. I do have a slide on that. And the swamp in that context is not a political term. It refers to the patterns of thinking that members of the general public have that interfere with our ability to sometimes communicate as effectively as we would like about aging issues in our community. It makes it more difficult for us to get funding. So for example, one of the things that we know is at the same time, the older population in the United States as well as around the world is increasing. Philanthropic funding for older adult programs has decreased over time. And we know that there are a lot of policy threats as well. And we also know that because of persistent ageism, public policy for things like age-friendly communities is diminished. And so we have to, as advocates, say why they are important. So what Frameworks then did with that resulting research was create a set of what they call test messages. And they tested this message with a huge sample size, over 12,000 people around the United States that were demographically representative: age, gender, race, ethnicity, socioeconomic status, political affiliation. And they found narratives that moved the needle. So what we do, and I've got a few of those in our slides, and I'm happy to talk about them. But the narratives are basically of two categories. One is, the category number one is older adults are a resource and an asset to our communities, not a deficit, and we need to do all that we can do to support that. So there's a specific way of talking about that I can share with you, and that providing very concrete solutions. So for many of you, probably the work that you do are examples of those very concrete solutions that help people make the connection between how older people are an asset and a resource and what that looks like on the ground, right? So that's kind of story number one. They call that embracing the dynamic. Story number two, and that story is really about increased longevity. We're living longer, older people are a resource. Let's stop saying words like silver tsunami, right? So that's kind of story number one. Story number two is a way of talking about ageism that layers it in kind of the value, a shared value that Frameworks found tested well, and that shared value is justice. So Frameworks found if we talked about ageism as the next civil rights issue, and that's something that some of the leading aging organizations were doing, here's what happened. People who maybe had experienced racism or sexism thought, well, it can't possibly be that bad. So maybe there is something wrong with those old people. I'm saying in jest. And then, but the other is that it really limited people's thinking about what do we do and how do we harness the benefit of an aging America. It limited people's thinking to legal strategies. Just if you're discriminated against, just go complain to the EEOC. So instead, what Frameworks found was that it's really, really important that we lead with the value of, when we are talking about ageism, that we lead with the value of justice, that we talk about the importance of confronting the injustice of ageism. It is really important when we are talking about ageism to define it. I like to use the World Health Organization definition of stereotyping, prejudice, and discrimination against people based on their age. And we know that ageism can also occur against younger people. So, for example, some of the narrative right now going on coronavirus is, and it's ageism on both sides, right? The older people should die anyway. That's discrimination. Those younger millennials are just hanging out on the beach and they don't care, right? So that's ageism when we stereotype somebody simply based on their age. Why is it important to talk about ageism if we want to change the narrative? Well, Frameworks found most people don't even know what it is. They don't consider it a thing. So if we as advocates of older people aren't talking about it and talking about and giving examples of how it plays out, people are like, I have no idea what you're talking about. So, and again, it's really important to talk about solutions. So one of the campaigns that we did and that we are doing in Colorado, it's on suspension right now, is a campaign for age-friendly workplaces. We are going around, we do presentations to businesses, to chambers of commerce about the benefits of not only older workers, but of having age integrated, so age-friendly and multi-generational. We pull the research together, we turn them into presentations, we do presentations and workshops, and we started that last year, and we found that 87% of people who attended one of the presentations said that they were more likely to hire an older worker. So now again, all of that is sort of like on halt right now. We had a lot of those presentations scheduled, but all of those happen in person so that we can, have conversations, et cetera. So those are kind of two big themes. And then there's an issue of language, and I'm just going to kind of wrap up that. And I see we've got like at least 18 questions.
We got a lot of.
I want to get to that, but the language is important. And here is some of the language that we have been hearing a lot, right, in the last week. The elderly. One. So, and then there was that Wall Street Journal article yesterday that said, wow, at 60, I'm not thinking I'm elderly, right? So who are you calling elderly? Well, Frameworks actually did an experiment that layered the terms senior, senior citizen, elderly, older adult, and older person. And what Frameworks found was that the terms senior, elderly, senior citizen conjure up in the minds of the general public all of those negative stereotypes. So the recommendation is avoid that language and either use older adult or older person, or be very specific about the age of the person that maybe your program, your work involves. So my work involves, mentoring people age 55 and over to get back in the workplace, or that kind of thing. So using that more neutral, inclusive language is one part of it. The other thing that we're hearing a lot about, and I was actually talking to a news director at one of our local stations about this last night, is the word vulnerable. So this is a little bit frustrating because we've now spent in Colorado 2 years talking about stop doing the pity party about older people. We know that some people do need supports, but there are a lot of people who are really valuable assets to our communities. And now all of a sudden, that's all being kind of washed over with this poor, vulnerable, elderly, they can't get their groceries or their toilet paper. So, I'm feeling like we, especially now, have a lot of work to do. Some of it might sound frivolous, but we know that how people think influences what kind of public policies that they're going to support, whether they will support public funding, and how they will view things like health, especially, so I'm going to tie it back to coronavirus, how they will view healthcare decisions that are made about people based on their age and not other symptoms. So that was my half-day workshop in, 20 minutes? I don't know. So anyway, preview. I would love to, conversation questions.
So let's do this. What I saw were two types of questions. One were on the general front and one were more specific to Corona. And what I think maybe I'll do is I'll go to the questions and open up the mic for the person who asked the question and let them speak it themselves so we can see them. And
all right, so I'm going to put it on speaker view so that I can actually look at whoever is speaking.
Yeah. So, all right. If that makes sense. So just to go to the more general questions first. So where's David Abend? Let me get to Dave. There he is. Okay. So David, if you can speak your own question and put your voice in the room.
I guess my question is, when is it kind of ageism, and when is it legitimate concern, and how do you tell the difference? Because when I talk about, my parents are late 80s, and my daughter is 29, and I refer to them as both at risk because
Right.
my daughter has a severe asthma issue.
Right.
And so I say they're at risk, and they're at risk because of their age.
Right.
And so the idea, we in the family and neighbors called up my parents and said, can I help get you food?
Hmm.
Can I help do
Hmm.
that? Because they're at risk, just like
Right.
I tried to help my daughter. So I'm hearing these things like, like it's bad to call up people who are older and say, can I help you? Like that is somehow ageism. So I'm just trying to
Yeah.
figure out.
So I really hope that nothing I said conveyed that, because I think part of it is we all need to support each other as community, right? And I keep going back, the CDC actually, I think, has used much better language than either the reporters or some of the local health officials who are talking about coronavirus. But the CDC is very descriptive and factual. It says, here are 3 categories of individuals that are, it doesn't call them vulnerable, it doesn't make them, sympathetic figures. It says that they are vulnerable, and it says people who are age 65 and older, so it's a more neutral term. It's not seniors, it's not just all older people. And then below it, it has a chart where you can look for yourself, and that chart is changing daily, right? And then it has the second category, people who have asthma and some other kind of specific chronic disease, and the third, people with HIV. So to me, it's an illustration of, if we can be descriptive and use neutral language and not make assumptions, of course you want to care parents, and I think we all want to care about community members, but to me, it's ageist to make assumptions that someone either needs or doesn't need help kind of based on their age. I mean, it's the kind of thing like anything else that we would ask and we would identify, and keep, obviously monitoring the CDC.
So just before we move to the next question, thank you for the answer. David, you just want to say 30 seconds about what your magazine is, so that people have never met you on this call and you're a new member. So
Sure. I founded an online magazine called The Bucket, and our mission is to help people lead more fulfilling lives by acknowledging and embracing their own mortality.
Yeah.
And so our audience is relatively younger people, for the sake of argument, I'll say 50 to 70, 75,
Right.
And help them use kind of mortality as a catalyst, as a leverage point for thinking about how much time you have left and how are you going to use it. And so we have this thing called the bucket age, which is basically your statistical life expectancy minus your current age. And statistically, that's how many years you have left. And to think about that with every decision you make. And so the whole magazine
Very
is
cool. Very
based
cool.
on that.
Right.
very cool.
So I love the way to me, that was great framing, the way you described it. This magazine is geared toward people age 50 to 75 who have a certain need. We want to encourage them to kind of think about that. Those are the kind of neutral and inclusive ways we should describe, as how some might say, well, it's a magazine for seniors of things to do before they die, right? You're a great framer, obviously. Congrats, David.
So,
and I'm going to subscribe online. It sounds fascinating.
Yes,
Right.
please do. Thebucket.com.
Okay.
say it again, David, so everyone can
The
hear.
Bucket, all one word.
The Bucket. Okay. All right.
Okay. So just looking for Thelma.
Would you put that in the chat box, please?
Oh, great idea.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the name and address.
David, why don't you do that?
Web address.
And
Here I am.
there you are, Thelma. Okay, great. So why don't you go ahead and ask your question?
Well, I've asked a couple. One of them says for me because I didn't find the place to say who it's from. But it's really about whether we're kind of losing ground at this moment in the public eye. I think we are, because the accent is totally on the negative. If
Mhm.
you are, as I am, a senior, I'm 87, in a couple of months.
A most productive 87.
Right.
Thanks. But there is no emphasis on how seniors are helping in any way, or nor is to any strength still being identified. For the last couple of weeks, we are only seen as a drag.
Exactly. Exactly. And that's where I personally, so Thelma, thank you for raising that. And that's something I really want to elevate. I feel like for 2 years, and I'm going to say specifically in Colorado, but it's not only, I mean, you know, San Francisco is doing some great things. Boston's doing amazing things. We've had all of this momentum around older people are resources in our community, and they're doing great things, and they're volunteers, and they're valued mentors in the workforce and all of that. And all of a sudden, it's been relegated to that original research that Frameworks did, which found that the general view of older people was negative, that they were a decline, depression, deterioration, a drain on society, zero sum, anything, any energy or thought expended in the direction of older people was at the expense of younger people, instead of a, how are we all in this together? So, and I will confess,
And how are we
I actually burst
resourced?
into tears twice yesterday around all of this, having read another awful negative article about older people. And then because I'm very active on social media, seeing all of the social media comments about, you know, boomer doom and all of that kind of thing. Yeah, it's distressing, but that's why I feel like all of our voices, everybody on this call, everybody we work with, are so important. And so, Bruce, one of the things you and I had chatted ahead of time, what are we going to do next at changing the narrative? We don't use the term calling out, we use calling in, and letting people gently know, you know, you might not view that as ageist, but this is kind of an ageist thing. And I was on a call yesterday, and Jan Hively, you were on this call as well with Encore. Somebody came up with this sort of wonderful idea that, especially now, those of us who are older, who have been through crises, can share with younger people, you know, yes, we can get through this. Here are the things. Here's what it means when a community comes together. And all of us can role model that, right? So thank you so much for bringing it up, because I'm feeling that way too. And I'm glad to know I'm not the only one.
I'd like to add something, Bruce, if
Go
I
ahead.
may.
And before you get off to Thelma, why don't you also give a 30-second bit about who you are? So,
well, among other things, I have a book coming out in June called How Seniors Are Saving the World, Retirement Activism to the Rescue. It can be pre-ordered on Amazon, even as we speak. But I also have had the blog elderchicks.com for the last 10 years.
Okay.
If you look on Elder Chicks today, you will meet some really wonderful people who are using this time creatively. And a couple of them are people who happen to be featured in the book. Well, one of them is anyway. And another one is someone I've never met, never heard of before. And she wrote sent such a delightful message today that if you want to at least smile about the moment, take a look at www.elderchicks.com today and see what this woman named Valerie is doing at this time.
Thelma, I'm absolutely going to do that. I'm going to do that. I'm going to share it on our, so we have, one of the things that we were trying to do to change the narrative was to change the narrative that older people aren't active in digital and social media. So we've got, you know, for a startup organization, we've got over 9,000 followers on Facebook. I'm going to be sharing this with them. I'm going to go right to it and I'm going to share it with them.
Thank you.
Fantastic. So thank you, Thelma. So Larry, if you can unmute yourself wherever you are. I've got mine on speaker view, so I'm not seeing everyone, but why don't you ask your own question and introduce yourself as well.
Hi, I'm Larry Jacobson.
Hi, Larry.
Hi. I think what you're doing is amazing. And I love the idea of going around to companies and presenting this idea of, well, my question is, I gave a speech at the HR West conference last year, and it was all about the wisdom of keeping elderly workers.
Right.
And phasing them out and keeping their wisdom rather than letting their wisdom walk out the door.
Right.
And it was really well received by the 20 people who came to the workshop, as opposed to
We've got to scale this work, right? Yeah.
Yeah. And I thought, but I really had something going here.
Yeah.
And all those companies, I said, look, I'll come into your company and I'll do a workshop and help those who are at retirement age move on to the next thing. And it seemed like it fizzled out. And I don't think it was me letting go. It was just, I couldn't get anybody to commit. And these were some progressive companies like Google and some others who, say that they're doing this.
Right.
But really.
So where we had the most traction, Larry, and again, but this is sort of, I know most companies right now are just trying to figure out how do we stay in business, right? So it's kind of, we're going to be looping back, and I would love to, when we do that, kind of chat with you about maybe some joint messaging. But what we found was the most effective was, and I don't know what community you're in Colorado, there is, up until last Friday when almost everybody was laid off, there was such a talent shortage that when we went in and we said, look, companies, you're having a talent shortage, you can't fill jobs, it's hampering your growth, and here's a solution. People started listening, and it was all about the bottom line. It wasn't because it was a good thing to do or anything. It was totally a bottom line, and that was what started getting us traction. We talk about bad timing. I think on February 28th announced, and then we had an article in our major paper here. We announced that we were going to be bringing the National Certified Age-Friendly Employer designation. So it comes out of Tim Driver and the Age-Friendly Foundation, right? So we were doing that. We got press coverage on it. It was all great. We're ready to go. Like literally after, we got like 12 calls right away of people wanting us to evaluate their workplaces and seeing if they could be certified. Now, of course, do we think anybody is spending time today, this week, thinking about, so I think
I'm living in the past.
I think it's a good idea, and I think we need to hold on to it, and we're letting people know we're there, but now we know that we need to pivot, because I know myself as a small business owner, it's payroll, right, that I'm worried about, and keeping things going, and not some of this other kind of stuff.
Well, I have to say that I think I've been fairly immune to any ageism.
Yeah.
Up until recently.
Yeah.
And that was one of my questions was for asking for real life examples. And I just wanted to share this very briefly with the group, which will be unique for me. But
the brief part, you mean?
The brief part, yes.
I love this group, Bruce. I'm sorry.
So I'm advertising, looking for a new roommate and or a housemate.
Yeah.
And the place is gorgeous. It's perfect. The price is a little on the higher end, but it's okay.
Right.
And then there's my age, and I think that for the first time, I'm thinking, or I'm making this up, that people are looking at this going, well, he's 65. We don't want to live with him. I mean, I kind of feel it,
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, ageism is real. Larry, the reason that at Changing the Narrative, when we started, we only were going to do kind of the frameworks and aging and ageism workshops, right? We weren't going to do this whole age-friendly business stuff. In every single workshop that I did the first year in 2018 of Changing the Narrative, people were coming up to me, people our age were coming up to me with, hey, that ageism thing you're talking about happened to me, happened to my partner, happened to my dad. And I was like, whoa, this is, because as the head of my own company, I hadn't experienced ageism, right? So it's kind of like, whoa, yeah. No, It's real. It's real. But that's why it's so important to talk about it and let people know it's real, and just say, okay, what are we going to do about it?
So
I'm in a very conservative area, so I'm just kidding. It's San Francisco.
Well, you're not supposed to be out anywhere. You're all locked up, right?
I'm not. What do you think? I'm at the beach?
I was like,
So
Valley, you're in Sebtown. And
Yeah.
you can't get any more bohemian and laid back than that.
So a couple, let's see, Barbara Abramowitz and Julie Nordstrom had similar questions. So Barbara, why don't you take a stab at asking your question and then pass it on to Debbie. And then there's a question I want to get to as well, so of Julie's. So Barbara, why don't you go first and introduce yourself slightly and ask your question. You to unmute yourself, Barbara.
Yeah, I actually didn't have a question. It was more I was interested in the general presentation and then linking to what's happening currently. But I'm in the Boston area. I'm a psychotherapist and a life coach. And currently, as how do we put it, an elder person, getting credentialed as a mental health integrative medicine professional.
Fantastic. Congrats.
Thank you.
You're encore. Yeah.
I'm encore. I'm out there. I don't feel like,
Right.
what can I say? Like all of us, we probably feel more like 25 or 30 inside.
Yeah.
I'm in core myself, but
are you in core?
yeah. So maybe Julie, well, first I want to just get Debbie's face and voice in here. So Debbie, can you just chime in if you had a question that you wanted to ask and show yourself?
I don't think I'm muted. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we do.
Yeah.
Okay. I didn't have a question, but this conversation made me think of something. I had never really thought of coronavirus and ageism. So yesterday, I was reading an op-ed piece, and I don't know if it was either the New York Times or the Washington Post, because I was reading both, but it was written by a rabbi who works with people with disabilities. And he was talking about the coronavirus being addressing both ageism and ableism.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
having a real concern that if we start to ration care,
Right.
that those are going to be the two groups that are going to be out. And that was shocking for me to read that,
right.
because I had not thought about that before.
Right. And we know that that's what's happening in Italy now, right? So it's real. And that's why all the flatten the curve is so important. And while, and obviously that's important, and I'm in my self-quarantine, not in my office, so I don't have my headphones or anything. All of a sudden I was like, it's my first webinar I'm doing like on my kitchen counter. So, but I think it's important, certainly to share all the tips about how we flatten the curve, but it's important, I believe, for all of us to be raising the issue of ageism and calling it to people's attention of how it's playing out here, so we don't end up with those dire outcomes.
Yeah, I think that's really important.
Thank you for bringing that up, and I'll look in that. I will look. I get both the Times and the Post, so I'll look. So
Julie Nordstrom, and also just Debbie is in Florida, and she's a life coach, and so you're in Sarasota, right?
Right.
Good. Okay. So Julie Nordstrom, who's in Newton, why don't you introduce yourself, Julie, and ask your own good question?
Sure. So I live in the Boston area, and I teach at a Regis College in the social work program, but I've been involved in the aging field for quite some time. Mm-hmm. As a executive board member of the Newton Council on Aging, one of the things that we've been focused on for quite some time now is the issue around social isolation and loneliness. Mm-hmm. And what makes me cringe, and I'm not necessarily focusing in on ageism, but with the whole COVID-19 going on, where it's all this emphasis on we have to socially distance ourselves. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately has the extreme negative ramifications on a lot of people who are living on their own.
Right.
And that doesn't necessarily mean just all the older adults.
Right.
It is people across the age span.
Right.
Unfortunately. And I think the stereotyping does come up when we're talking about the social distancing. because we're thinking, oh, you know, all those elderly, frail people.
Right.
Well, that's not the case.
It's not. So
Yeah.
I've been in self-quarantine here for 2 days because I was at my father-in-law's funeral, and you cannot distance at a funeral with a bunch of Oklahomans and Texans, right? And all the church ladies coming in. So I have been here, and I'm going kind of stir crazy. Really, if I wasn't doing this webinar today, I'd be like, oh, I need to be able to talk to people. But I was on a phone call with someone who was also talking about, the groups that we know, right? The research shows are more socially isolated are both older people and also younger people, right? Those are the recent research shows that they're the most lonely. This is when I'm, trying to put on my innovation hat. I feel like there's almost an opportunity here if we could figure out how to connect, right? These groups that kids can't be in school, right? So they're kind of going, I mean, the ones whose parents are around homeschooling them have at least something to do, but I think, kind of older middle schoolers, high schoolers are kind of going crazy. And I'm going crazy. So nice to be with you all. So what do we do about it?
And I also have a follow-up comment, which is, at least in England, which is where I have a family living,
yeah.
The government has now, this is maybe within the last week or two, they've now mandated or suggested, maybe the word, that people 70 and older self-isolate for 4 months. Can you imagine?
That should do wonders for mental health.
Yeah. We've got to figure out
social isolation instead of
and that's where I feel like we need to figure out just some innovative solutions. So one of the principles of frameworks that I didn't have a chance to talk a lot about is a value that is really used. So it's really important to talk about tested values, right? If we want to shift people's thinking. And a value that actually tests really well is appealing to American spirit of innovation and ingenuity, right? We can think of ways to do new things. I don't know if any of you know Robert Edgar, who was the founder of DC Kitchen, and then he was at LA Kitchen, and now he's in New Mexico. But so we know across the country, right, bars and restaurants are closing, and at the same time, people are, at risk of not having meals. And so he put this bold idea, he always puts bold ideas out there, of why don't we just have the restaurants stay in business, prepare the food for older people, get younger people to kind of drive them, like a ramped up Meals on Wheels, but keeping restaurants in business. I don't know if that's a good idea or not. I'm not in the restaurant business, but I feel like we need to be thinking about what are ways that we just don't tell people hole up in your house. Because, I mean, literally, so right before, my daughter is a millennial lobbyist in Colorado. Colorado finally shut down the state legislature early last week, but not soon enough for her not to be exposed to 2 legislators who've now been diagnosed with COVID. So she calls me right before, and I'm like, okay, so we just spent the whole week together. No, you're not coming over for my birthday tomorrow. We need to figure out ways around this, right?
Definitely.
It seems to me that all of you, given what you do, have not giving you stuff to do that's not in your mission, but have a unique potential platform for crowdsourcing ideas.
Well, I think, you, as part of your mission too, has been to focus on solution. We can all talk about the issues, but I think the question really is what are the solutions? What do we do and how do we do it?
Right.
So I have can I just do one quick follow-up
yes,
comment?
Go ahead.
So through the Newton Council on Aging, just today, we are now setting up a system where people who are users of the senior center can now be put in a list where they receive calls, just a friendly hello.
Yeah, I love that.
Just a way of, and we're basically, apparently Needham has already started doing it. I'm sure there's a lot of other places that are doing this.
Yeah.
So I'd like Adrian Berg, who has a couple of very good questions to ask. Adrian, can you unmute yourself wherever you are?
Yes, I did that. Can you hear me all right?
We do.
Yeah.
So
Okay,
why don't you say briefly who you are and what you do, and then go to the question.
Okay, so I'm Adrienne Berg, and I do a couple of things. I have a podcast called Generation Bowl, the Fountain of Truth about aging. And that skews 50 plus, but I have a younger skewing blog called Aging for Beginners. And
I love that.
yes, and it's pretty popular. It went from
Yeah.
twice a month to once a week now.
Oh, wow.
And,
Okay.
and then I also am the director of something called the Meta-Obesity Initiative, which deals with delaying and preventing diseases of aging.
Mhm.
And my question will be about that, but I want to make a very quick statement. Thelma, I think, solved all of our problems. Because my first question before she said anything was that my friends, and I have friends with MS, I have friends with, that in the old days they would have called them shut-ins, that
Mhm.
actually do not go out and have not for years. And they have a very, very rich life, a rich social life, intellectual life, spiritual life. There are many others who are, down that scale. They're doing okay. They're in their 90s. They do get out. They do wonderful things, but they're at home most of the time. And these people have something to share. They can be incredible mentors
Right.
to people of any age. And I don't think it's difficult to get that information out through blogs. There's a whole world out there on podcast blogs and websites like we've got thebucket.com, we've got Thelma here, we've got all of my outlets, and that's just 3 people.
Yeah.
It's really easy. I mean, let me tell you something. I'm a podcaster on aging. I got plenty of competition. All of those competitors are there to get out the word to younger people.
Yeah.
From not only older people like
Right.
the boomers, but the old, what is now called the old, because they know how to create that life and not go crazy there. They've done
Right.
So I do think we can
I
make
love
that
that.
happen. I think we can
Right.
make that happen.
So imagine if everybody committed to doing a podcast or a blog. I'm going to give everybody deadlines. I'm really good at this. Within the next 10 days, share them through Life Planning Network, and we blasted them out everywhere. Imagine.
And of course, we can do that on our platform. If we load an article, then it is instantly shareable on about 80 different social media accounts.
Fantastic.
And I would think that the opportunity here is not so much to get the word out from feisty working people like us, but to find out from folks like my friend who's not actually gone out for a long time, and people in their 80s and 90s and older. Actually, there are centenarian studies where we'll be able to find out what they do. It's easy.
Interesting.
What they do, so that we're really shifting from the feisty boomer to hearing from what we might call the old.
Yeah.
So
we're changing the narrative about the value of older people, which is
of significantly older people.
Right.
So that's my suggestion. But my question is a really tough one on my mind, and this is really useful to me. Meta-obesity means inflammation, immunity system, the immune system, the metabolism. It's all the reasons why the older adult is more vulnerable to corona. All right. Mm-hmm. And there has now been a good thing happening because of corona. There's now a focus on researchers, universities, the government on delaying and preventing diseases of aging. Mm-hmm. Sounds great, and it is good. And all of this, if we had done it years ago, could have prevented this pandemic. Okay.
Right.
Now, here's the problem. Because all funding goes to individual diseases like Alzheimer's, mm-hmm. Parkinson's, and so on, mm-hmm. in order to get funding for this, and there's a lot poised for funding, you have to say that aging is a disease.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Believe it or not, you have to call aging a disease only for the purposes of getting money.
Right.
Now Meta-obesity, that I'm the initiator of in terms of a conference coming up in
October.
In October, a wonderful webcast that's coming out March 27th, is really working hard on this slippery slope.
Yeah.
Because it used to be a dialogue between scientists. Mm-hmm. Now we've got the public hearing it, and we can't be looked at as saying that aging is a disease. Mm-hmm. And yet if we don't call it out in some way, we don't get money to fund delaying and preventing disease of aging.
Right.
It's a real narrative framing issue.
Right.
and we're right at that cusp now where we're talking about it now, and I think you can help. That's my question.
So we should probably have an offline conversation, because this is big. I'm looking at the time, and it's like I could stay talking to everybody forever. And since I'm going to be home for at least 14 days, feel free, Bruce, to
you can
share
join
my contact info, and we can schedule any number of calls.
Well, you can also join the Life Planning Network, and then you can just dial anyone up at any time. So
perfect. I could do that as well. That was a soft pitch.
Soft pitch. I'm known for my subtleties.
And if that doesn't work, you'll be turned over to me for the hard pitch.
Joyce, I want to get to Marnie's question, but I think you had a question, and then we'll go to Marnie.
Well, actually, beside the questions, we were talking earlier about we need solutions. And here are three that came to mind as we were having a conversation that I'm actually involved with. One, anybody here can get a free Zoom account, what we're doing right now. You just go on zoom.us and just read about it. But you can only be on for 40 minutes for free, but it's a way that you can be in conversation with friends, family, whomever.
Yep.
And again, we can talk about this later because I know we're pressed for time. Second idea, I'm experimenting with a group of cousins right now in different states of having our Passover Seder on Zoom.
Yeah.
Everybody has their own meal in their home, but we're together in community with songs and rituals and all that goes with it. And you could translate that to an Easter dinner that you usually have with friends and family.
Yeah.
And third idea is something a group of my friends are doing. Now, you have to have the right kind of neighborhood to do this in, but they have happy hour every day out in their driveways.
Yeah, no, I love that. So I will confess. So tomorrow's my birthday. I'm turning 67, and I'm doing a Zoom happy hour with some friends because we can't get together in person. So, and I don't know how we're going to do the Zoom dinner with my daughters, but we'll figure that out. Yeah.
Joyce told me her idea last night about Passover over Zoom, and I stole it immediately, and I'm on my way to creating a Seder in a matzah box on that. So
I've been attending yoga classes in Zoom.
And I've been doing meditation.
On Tuesday night there was a naked yoga class, which surprised the hell out of me.
we won't be doing that in LPN.
But also, Joyce, wait, I wanted to correct something on Joyce. When if you have your Zoom account, you have unlimited time if it's only with one other person.
That's right. If it's only one.
Yeah. No, these are great. These are the kind of things that we all need to do and share and build out, and also take credit as older people putting those ideas into motion, so that, again, it's demonstrating older people are an asset.
What would be wonderful is if we all come up with these ideas and we start posting them on Connector. And that way, because it's what we're just coming up with in these few minutes together. But the good idea is going to come when you're lying in bed tonight or when you drink it, whenever. And we want to be able to post it and share it. And so this is an ongoing thing that we should all take responsibility to make happen.
Is Connector your platform?
It is.
See, now Joyce is doing the soft sell that I'm more inclined. If I know I can get access to all of this, that's going to work better than somebody telling me just join. Anyway.
So I'd like to add briefly that I had my first book group on Zoom today. So we're setting that up for our monthly meeting, and my gym is posting workouts every single day.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
On YouTube. So these are ways to keep our routines and stay connected.
Joyce, you can also start a forum. Well, I'll work with you if you know, and we can start a forum in which people can put their ideas directly into the forum and have it as a running list. Perfect. So I want to get to Marnie's question, which so Marnie, rather than me asking it, why don't you show your face? And
I don't remember a question.
Okay.
So
here let me frame it for you a little. You asked about reframing the word social distancing. I've been doing that by calling it solitary solidarity instead of social distancing. But
Actually,
hard
it
to
came
say.
up for me in that I was listening to the local news, and the doctor, one of the doctors who's working on all of this for our government, said he would like to hear us change the language from social distancing to physical distancing.
That's right. That's right.
Because social distancing really kind of energetically stabs you in the heart.
Yes.
And physical distancing is just about maintaining a physical space so that you can stay healthy.
Right.
So I didn't really have a question. It was more just putting that out.
But I think that's important. And you know, one of the things that I've learned about narrative change, though, is it requires a core group of people who all say, this is the narrative that we're going to adopt. And this came up a lot with the term like senior versus older adult, older person. There were some people who said, well, let's reclaim the word senior. And it was like, yeah, but if we know the general public views that as the incompetent, not willing to learn, do we really want to do that? And then some people would say, well, you know, what about the term perennial, or what about the term wise one? And to be able to successfully reframe, a group of people, and it certainly could be Life Planning Network members, would have to say, you know what, we are consistently in all of our communications across every platform going to advocate for physical distancing but social connection, or whatever it is you decide, right? So, good point.
Bruce, can I say a word about naming things?
Sure, go ahead.
First of all, I started life many years ago as an elementary school teacher when we were so careful in our little reading groups to use names like the bluebirds and the robins and the starlings instead of saying group 1, 2, or 3, or A, B, or C. And it took the kids at any grade about 2 weeks to know that that the robins were the smart ones and the bluebirds were the middle group, and which was the lowest group, no matter what you called them. And I have to say that sometimes when I hear people balk with our new title and say, I wish you hadn't said seniors, I wish you had said elders in the title. Well, it's partly a marketing thing with our publisher, which one we choose, but I have to say, I know plenty of seniors, and I don't know that many elders. So I think that that's a quality difference too. And senior includes everybody, whether they're really elders or they're just people who are aging, maybe well or maybe not so well. So I really think that some of this is just hogwash.
Yeah. So Thelma, usually when I do the formal presentation, I start with, I call it my trigger warning. You will hear things that you may disagree with, right? Because, and in part because usually I do this with people who are experts and who've had a lot of experience with using different terms. What frameworks keeps reinforcing is it's not when you and I are communicating with each other or even communicating within the Life Planning Network, but communicate when we are trying to advocate for a policy and we're communicating to the general public. If we know that in the minds of the general public, not the experts, but in the minds of the general public, the term senior has negative connotations, we want to be very careful about using that term because we may be conjuring up negative connotations that don't serve our purpose. But as I always conclude, so I grew up in Massachusetts, French Canadian, and I had 2 mémés, and I'm like, you know, if your mémé wants you to call her senior, call her senior.
Well, and if your marketing department of a big publishing house wants you to call it seniors too.
Oh, yeah.
I hope people will buy it anyway.
Right. But you're going to have an incredible opportunity, especially given the theme of it. And I want to do a book review and kind of shout this all out when this gets published, because your message is exactly what we're trying to communicate. But we could even do a little aside. The publishing house made her do it.
The publishing house made it.
Can I weigh in? Bruce, it's Liz.
Sure, go ahead, Liz. Welcome. Why don't you just introduce yourself for those who don't know you briefly?
Thank you. Liz Fideller, and I've written a bunch of books on older workers.
Yeah.
So you can look those up. I just wanted to say what a pleasure it has been to be listening to this whole conversation. especially when we're all stuck indoors. But I am going out for a walk very shortly.
Yeah.
But I wanted to suggest that the essence of this conversation would make a good article for SHRM, Society for Human Resource Management, because they, not more than any other group, but they are at least one major group that could have some influence on getting the word out.
Yeah.
And they're sort of, that is a very good vehicle for getting the reframing idea across.
Terrific. And Liz, what's your last name? How do
Fideler.
Fideler.
So actually, I mean, if people are willing to stay on for just a few more minutes, I actually was very interested in asking Janine a little about, outside the Corona piece, was asking a little about her efforts working with companies and jobs. And Liz, you certainly know an awful lot about work and elders. And I wondered if you in particular had a question to frame for Janine in relationship to the work that they're doing in getting the messaging out. You know, I'm curious to hear what success. So for years, for the last 10 years, I've been hearing about how there's a missing connective tissue between what we're saying and the businesses. The businesses nod their heads, but nothing ever happens. So I'm curious. I get pretty frustrated with this feeling of there are lots of voices out there, but nothing ever seems to move the needle. Yeah. And I'm wondering if you're finding anything that's effective. And Liz, if you have some thoughtful question beyond that, I'd love to hear it.
Yeah, Liz, do you have a question? Or I'm happy to weigh in on what we're finding. And keep in mind, we started our work with businesses essentially 1 year ago. It was in March 2019. And we're in March 2020. But literally what we did is we got a group of people in the room, some with HR backgrounds, some with corporate backgrounds. I laid out the issue that I had been seeing of at every workshop, running into people my age, younger, older, saying, hey, I want to work, I've still got game, but being pushed out, laid off. And then of course, there was that Urban Institute study that was released not this past December, the December before, that showed that 56% of people entering their 50s with stable employment were pushed out or laid off, right? So it's like, okay, we've got like real data. And then the AARP has recently done studies on that as well. So we put together, first we did why are all the reasons that businesses say they won't hire older workers. So we put all the myths out there. Then we had a volunteer team do the research to find out what does the research actually say on those issues. And so part of it, here are the myths, here's how we refute the research. We put it into a business case briefing. And Bruce, I'll send you two things. One, a link to, you can find all of this info on our website, but it's the page that's called Age Friendly Workplace. So you can download our business case briefing. You can download a resource guide we put together. And you can look at a series of blogs that we wrote to refute what some of the common myths are. So then we said, okay, we're doing briefings, we're doing blogs, let's go out and talk to businesses. And because I really am the only paid staff member, so we trained a group of people to go out and do presentations on this. And last year we did 29 presentations to chambers, and we reached a total about 900 business and civic leaders. And at some point we realized people were saying, so where do we find these older workers? And so we realized there was also a gap between first businesses are like, okay, you've convinced me that this can be a solution to my talent problem. Now what do I do? Okay, so that was one part. And then we started putting together a resource guide, and it's a very rudimentary, but you can download it on our website of, here are job boards that are specifically for age people 50 plus, here are some companies that do it. And the extent to which any of your members are involved in that field, I'd love to kind of connect all of that and have you all listed as resources as well. And then we realized, oh my God, we're onto something. So we just, in the last, I think in fall of 2019, we started putting a brief evaluation postcard together. And every time we did a presentation, we handed them out at the end, and we said, as a result of this presentation, do you have, I don't have the exact question, but have you increased awareness of the value of intergenerational? So we are never saying, this is really important for us. We are not us versus them. We never say older people better than younger or vice versa. It's what works best in our view as a mix of generation. So we did.
Janine, Bruce, can I weigh in? Yeah, before you go in, we don't need all the logistics of all that. I think you made your point. I wanted to share two things.
Yeah.
I wanted to point out, and maybe this is a bit of a pushback to some of the things you're saying about the word senior, that seniors, and the word seniors used for high school kids, high school, college kids, and it's not a pejorative.
Right.
Also, if my title for, I would say I work for some corporation, I'm called the senior manager of X.
Those are good. No, those are good. This is simply about what the research, so this isn't my opinion, Janine Vanderburg's opinion, it's not changing the narrative. It's that Frameworks Institute researched what those terms meant in the minds of the general public applied to older people. So we all know a senior in high school is a good thing, although I feel really bad for seniors in high school right now who are unlikely to get their prom and graduation. We know that everybody wants to be a senior vice president, but it's as communicators around these issues, we simply need to be aware. We can also choose to use them. I always say, I'm not the reframing police. I'm not going to check your website and see if you got the word senior out of it. But when we choose to use those terms, we are, the Frameworks research shows, conjuring up those negative stereotypes about older people.
Exactly.
But the choice is ours.
True. Let me make my other point before you go on. I wanted to say that when Bruce asked me what I do, and I said I write books about older workers, the newest book, which is Aging, Work, and Retirement, is coming out this June or July from Roman and ROWMAN, Roman and Littlefield. They published the other books as well. Now, the interesting thing I wanted to say is that this book is being marketed as a supplementary text to graduate and undergraduate students across a variety of fields: sociology, psychology, business management, social work, gerontology, of course. I don't know if I've left any out, but a lot of different fields. Now, this could potentially influence the next generation coming forward and make it. This is all about consciousness raising, as we used to call it.
Absolutely. So a lot of the models, so I was a long-time community organizer involved in the feminist movement, and a lot of what we've done in changing the narrative, we call it taking it from frameworks to groundwork. It's a community organizing model. And so I didn't have a chance to talk about some of the other things we do. We do workshops with students, and exactly at those points, because we want to get that next generation. We have a campaign that is called On the Same Page. I can send you a link to that website page as well, which is getting older people and younger people together for intergenerational conversations. It's exactly a consciousness raising model. We have a full toolkit that I developed last year on our website. So you can think of it as running a book club or a house party for a political campaign. You download the toolkit, it has sample invitations, it has questions, it has tips for facilitators. All you have to do is provide the refreshments of your choice.
Well, thank you very much. I want to be respectful of everyone's time, particularly yours, Janine, for being so gracious today.
Well, it's not like we have places to go, you know.
Well,
I'm sure it's happy hour for some people if you're on.
Speak for yourself, Larry.
Right, right.
But I will put up Janine's the URL and information for those who've been asking. But maybe, Janine, if you could just tell me, and I'll type it in again right now.
Well, I can type it in the chat, right?
Yep, you can type it in the chat.
Let me chat.
And you have messages in there too.
Yeah, and Bruce.
Yes, Joyce.
If we could share with everyone how they can download the chat, because there are a number of individual questions that are coming in to specific people, asking questions that have been offshoots of the conversation. So can they do that? And if so, how?
Oy. So on the right hand, if you look in your chat window, on the right hand side, there are 3 little buttons and it says save. If you click it, you'll see the download, you'll see a drop down and you'll see save chat. And you can save the chat there. I have been remiss in getting up our last videos because I've just been overwhelmed with work, but I'm going to make an effort to get this and the other 2 up. We'll put Janine's information up. And Janine, it sounds like it might be okay if we took some of the blogs from Changing the Narrative and posted them as well with,
Oh, sure.
obviously,
Our
credit.
goal is, so we say this a lot in the reframing bit. We know generally you're not supposed to plagiarize stuff, but we're like plagiarize away.
Great.
Or borrow or share. I mean, you know, give us credit, obviously, but, you know, I mean, the basic principle of framing is that all of us are out there giving the same messages. Older people are valuable. And we say it in different, they're valuable in community. Older people are value in business. Ageism is wrong, right? The more we are all saying that and sharing information about it, the better a world we're going to be.
Well,
Bruce, I have the mic.
Art, just make it brief because I want to end so, but Art, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Some of you have heard me speak in the past, May of last year, but be that as it may, 10 years ago when I was approaching age 60, I had already had 10 years under my belt for a major well-known publicly traded financial services firm, and I was doing educating of financial advisors and long-term care planning. The bottom line, I was very well received, did well, and they kind of targeted me and a couple of others because I was coming up on 60. The bottom line is they didn't get off cheap, and I'll be able to leave it at that. But it opened up a door for me, and I've been doing webinar online education and enrollment, and it's been a gas. The bottom line is I've been there and love to talk to you offline about that, Janine. But
You bet.
I wanted to ask you a question. What was the community in Colorado that said no one under 65 should come in?
It was, should go to bars or restaurants? Is that
correct?
That was Gunnison County.
Gunnison, all right.
I can send you, I don't know how to send you an article.
Okay.
Well, you can email me because I've got a link directly to the article about it.
Okay. My point
Or
is,
you can go to our Facebook page. It's Change, what is it? I think it's Change Narrative CO, but it's on there as well.
I'll find out. But
Yeah.
what I'm driving at is this, and this may sound a little bit dystopian, but we're in a dystopian world now. I wouldn't be surprised that on governmental level, maybe on a federal level, to reduce and ameliorate the problem with the economy, freed up service economy, that basically there's 65 plus whatever are told don't come in, and they'll deal with it at least in part that way, and that's another conversation.
Oh, that's a really big thing to leave at the end of a webinar, Art. But
I've been raising my hand for 15 minutes.
Okay, and I'm sorry I didn't. I don't know how to. But let me just say this. To me, why this work about reframing aging and changing the narrative is so important is so that we don't have those outcomes. And that's why it's so important that all of us become champions for this. It, you know, not just a handful, it's not just frameworks, it's not just changing the narrative. All of us in our communities can call attention, can share information and say, this is wrong. I think in Gunnison County, it was probably well meant. Some lovely public health official, my apologies to, and I love public health people, I'm sure some lovely public health person thought, well, we know older people are at risk, so we'll just tell them not to go to the bars, and therefore we're doing it for their protection. Sure. And it was reaction. We shared it on our Facebook, and of course our Facebook are people like you and older adults who are like, let's shut down the bar. Like I said, it became moot because all bars and restaurants in Colorado are now closed, but so they only had a day of excluding people age 60 and over. Now no one can go, but yeah.
Well,
Thank you.
thank you very much, Janine. I'm sure everyone here thanks you for your time and your thoughtfulness. This was a really fantastic conversation. So before we go, if everyone would go to the gallery view for a second and wave goodbye and say cheers, and so you all see each other. And thank you all for participating.
Bye, cheers.
Thank you. This is a great group.
Thank you, Janine.
Thank you for inviting
Thank
me, Bruce.
you.
Thank you.
And my email is in there, so feel free to reach out.
Happy
Wait, does
birthday.
anybody want
Happy,
to-
happy birthday.
No, that's all right. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. This is great. Fantastic.
All right.
Thank you all.
Thank you very
Good
much.
luck. Frame on.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Frame on.
Bye.